Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest are back in Premier League action at last on Monday night as they take on Crystal Palace at the City Ground. What's gone wrong with Palace so far this season? How is Eddie Nketiah, a man who might well have been lining up in Garibaldi Red, doing? And how can Forest hurt Oliver Glasner's team? To discuss all that, it's good to have Matt from a team called Palace Podcast back with us. How are you doing, Matt?
Yeah, very well, thank you. As I said to you before we came on, I'm very well. I just wish that Palace were doing a bit better.
Yes, yeah. It's such an interesting team because I think so far this season you're 18th, drawn 3, lost 4, 0 wins. You ended last season smashing teams out of the park. You put 5 past Newcastle, I think 5 past Villa. Looked like the team to watch this season. What's gone wrong? Is it as simple as no Michael Elise and no Joachim Andersen, or is there more to it, do you think?
Unfortunately, it's a bit of a perfect storm. Obviously, those guys leaving, especially Michael Elise, that's what will kind of take the headlines. But I think for me, it's things like the fact that we had lots of players getting towards the end of international tournaments in the summer. Obviously, Gahey was with England. The likes of Wharton, Henderson, and Eze, they were with England. They weren't playing as much. Mateta was at the Olympics. Lerma and Munoz got to the final of the Copa America. So that really disrupted pre-season. Then we've come back at the start of the season and, Joachim Andersen and Jordan Ayew left on the eve of our first home game, the second game of the season. That wasn't ideal. We brought in 4 players on deadline day. Again, that's great, but the season's already started. You then need to bed these guys in. I think also we've had a few little injuries. We've had a few players out of form as well. The likes of Eze and Mateta haven't been firing like they were at the back end of last season. Adam Wharton hasn't been fully fit. He's a fantastic player, but he's been struggling with injury. So, yeah, just lots of kind of little issues. I think also a little bit of luck as well. I mean, our first game against Brentford, Eze scored a perfectly good free kick. That was chalked off. That was at 0-0 in the first game. How different would things have been if that had stood? I think in our last 2 games against Everton and Liverpool, a couple of really good shouts for penalties. They weren't given. That's just the way things are going right now.
So how far off it are you in terms of performance? Because I've watched quite a lot of your games. I saw that Eze one again. He was in my fantasy league team, and I couldn't believe that. That was ridiculous refereeing. I watched the Liverpool game and the United game. You looked like sort of off it, but not a million miles off it in in phases of the game. Is that fair? Do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we're a million miles away, but I think unfortunately, as you mentioned, given how good we were at the back end of last season, it feels like we're a long way from that. So, yeah, listen, obviously it hasn't been a good start. We still haven't won a game. We need to get our first win as quickly as possible, but I'm not overly concerned just yet because I do think there was quite a lot of squad churn in the summer, quite a lot of business done late in the window. These players are going to take time to bed in. I've still got faith in Oliver Glasner. I think he's a good manager. I think given what he produced at the back end of last season, he definitely deserves to be given time. And also, I look at some of the other teams in the Premier League, some of the guys that have come up. I think realistically, there are going to be 3 worse teams than us. But yeah, unfortunately, it's probably not going to be the season that we maybe hoped it would be.
Is the wider fan base as sympathetic as you are? Or are you detecting rumblings at this early stage?
I think on the whole, they are pretty sympathetic. I think as a fan base, we're actually pretty sensible. But I do think that it's really important we get that first Premier League win fairly soon. We can't be going into that 3rd international break still without a win. We've got games coming up against the likes of you guys, Wolves, Fulham. We need to win one of those. We need to get that first win, get the monkey off the back, so to speak, and then hopefully start climbing the league.
I'll ask you about a few key players. Just out of curiosity, have you got I didn't have to put this in the notes. Have you got a predicted 11 for Palace? And I'll probably ask you names off the back of that.
So it's really tricky because since Glasner came in, we have played a 3-4-2-1, and that is his preferred system, the 3 at the back with the wing backs. But there have been a few rumblings that against Forest, he might actually go to 4 at the back. We had a behind closed doors friendly last week against Ipswich. I think he played around with the formation a bit. Daniel Munoz, who is a really important player for us, he went off with an injury against Liverpool. Now, we don't know how serious that is, but if he is out, then I don't really see how we can stick with the wing-back system because, Nathaniel Klein has been excellent for us over the years, but He's not really a wing back anymore. Ismail Assar is an attacking player. He doesn't really have the kind of defensive wherewithal to do it. So I think if Munoz is out, I think we will go to four at the back. So you'd imagine it would be Henderson in goal, Mitchell at left back, probably Gahey and Lacroix as the centre halves. And then I imagine Nathaniel Klein. In front of them, I would go for probably Lerma and Wharton. If Wharton's not fit, maybe Hughes. And then I think in attacking areas, the likes of Eze and Sarr in the wide areas, and probably Nketiah and Mateta up front together. This has been one of the issues we've had so far this season, is Eddie Nketiah at times has been asked to kind of play the Michael Olise role. Now, I think Eddie Nketiah is a good player, but he's not Michael Olise. And, he's been trying to almost shoehorn him and Mateta into the same starting lineup. Nketiah on the right doesn't really work. So if we did change the formation, if we went to four at the back, that does mean that we might be able to get two strikers on the pitch together and actually playing as centre forwards.
Let me ask you about Nketiah. He was so close to signing for us. I even did a podcast with an Arsenal fan about what he'd bring to us. We were so convinced he was coming. I saw a couple of your games, like I said, one where he played out wide and wasn't very effective at all. And then they dropped Mateta for the last game and Nketiah plays in the middle. And I thought he did all right, actually. I thought his link-up play was decent. How's he done overall?
It's really hard because, as I said, he's been played out of position for a lot of it. I think actually out of possession, he has been better than I thought he was. When you saw him at Arsenal, you sort of thought penalty box striker, poacher, doesn't really do much else. But actually, out of possession, he works quite hard. He links the play up pretty well as well. But yeah, I think we need to see him through the middle, for a decent run of games. I do feel as though he's the sort of player where if we do give him the chances, he will score goals. But unfortunately, at the minute, we haven't been creating enough. Obviously, Michael Olise moved on. His partnership with Eze was massive. At the start of the season, Eze hasn't been at his best, dropped in the England squad, I think understandably so. We need more from players like him to give the likes of Nketiah and Mateta the service.
What's going on with Eze? I watch highlights of games. He's missed some really good chances. Is he just low on confidence, do you think? What's happening there?
I think for someone with his ability, he doesn't have enough confidence. I think when you compare him to Michael Olise has so much confidence in his own ability. And in the final third, he is a killer. He's so good in front of goal. Whereas Ebbs, sometimes, if he's not at his best, he does look like he lacks confidence. I think also, if people watch England a lot, they will have seen it when he plays for England as well. Sometimes he almost plays within himself in that environment. He's got so much talent, so much ability. I really feel as though he does need to kick on. And, I think really we've got quite high standards for Ebbs now. We expect lots of goals and assists. And as you mentioned, so far this season, he has missed some really, really good chances. And, it's fine margins. If those had gone in, our start of the season could have been very different. So, yeah, I'm hoping that not being in the England squad will have been good for him. I'm hoping that a bit of extra time on the training ground, maybe a bit of time away as well, just to kind of clear his head, just to rest up. But yeah, he's such an important player for us, especially given the fact that we no longer have Michael Olise.
Mateta's the other interesting one. I mean, talk about finishing a season on fire. He was unbelievable at the end of the last season. So I was really surprised as someone who doesn't watch Palace often when he was left out in the last game. Has he not been playing well, or is it more a case of what you said around shoehorning square pegs into round holes and it not really coming off?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I also think with Jean-Philippe, the fact that, the back end of last season, he was red hot. And I think if you look at the rest of his time in the Premier League, he was overperforming. He's not going to keep doing that. But yeah, I think also you have to bear in mind the fact that he was at the Olympics. The Olympics finished very late. Obviously, he got to the final with France. He has played a lot of football. He hasn't looked as sharp this season. There have been times where I do think he has looked a little bit tired. And I think also, he's just really kind of the classic case of not having a fit and firing Eze and Olise behind him. He hasn't had as many chances. I still think that, if we can give him the opportunities, he will score goals. But also there's been a little bit of talk about him wanting a new contract as well, that kind of rumbling on in the background. So yeah, it hasn't been ideal. But, I think if everything behind him was as good as it was at the back end of last season, I think, he'd easily have a few more goals by now.
Every player I've asked you about there is a forward and an attacking player. They're the ones that grab the attention. Are they the strength of the team, or should I be looking elsewhere for areas that can hurt us?
I think when they're at their best, they are the strength of the team. I mean, for me, our best player is Mark Gahey. I think he's an outstanding defender. I think everyone saw in the summer just how good he is. You'd imagine that next summer he will be moving on. He's got 2 years left on his contract. There's a lot of talk about Newcastle wanting him this summer. I think for me, he'll go to a consistent Champions League club, a team that are challenging for trophies. He's an outstanding player. He has not benefited this season so far from all the chopping and changing at the back. Obviously, in the past, he had a really good partnership with Joachim Andersen. Joachim's moved on. Quite a few guys have played in that back three so far this season. There's been a few injuries. There's been new guys bedding in. That hasn't been ideal for him. But obviously, he's a key player for us. And then, I mentioned the wing backs, Tyreek Mitchell, Daniel Munoz, massive players for us, especially in Glasner's system. I think one of our biggest failings in the summer was not getting more cover at wing back. When you look at our options in those positions, they are really our only senior wing backs. And, it's such a demanding position for us to not have any kind of proper cover, given the fact that Glasner likes to play the system. It is slightly ridiculous. Obviously, I mentioned Adam Wharton as well. Fantastic player, exceptional for us at the back end of last season. For my money, probably one of the best players in the Premier League in the second half of last season. Obviously, had the summer with England. He's had a kind of groin issue that's been ongoing that he's managing. That hasn't been ideal for him. I feel as though there's been quite a few times this season where he's played for us and it's quite clear that he's not fit. Now, I don't think it's doing him or doing us any favours by him playing when he's not fit. So it'll be interesting to see if he does play on Monday night.
Yeah, I saw him come off early against Liverpool. That was what they were saying. Is it infuriating for you as a fan that Gahey's probably going to go? You've sold. You lose Elise. Historically, you lose. Zaha going back a long time, and I asked that because we're probably heading into that direction as a club potentially. We lost Brennan Johnson a couple of years ago, and maybe Murillo goes this summer or something. We dodged that bullet. The summer just gone, but we're kind of heading in the direction you've been in for a few years potentially. Is it annoying as a fan to see your best players go periodically?
It is, yeah, because you've always got this kind of idea that you're going to keep all your best players and then you're going to bring in more good players. And then before you know it, you'll be challenging for Europe every season. I don't really think that's the way the Premier League works for teams like Palace and Nottingham Forest. I think you have to sell your best players at the optimum time and at the optimum price. And I actually think that sometimes selling players is good. Obviously it's sad. You lose key players, you always kind of remember how good they were playing for your team. Quite often you see them go on to bigger and better things. But I think when you look at how teams grow these days, I think selling players is a good thing as long as I said, you sell them for a really good price and then you invest the money well. You spend the money that you get. This summer, obviously, we sold Michael Elise. We sold Joachim Andersen for £30 million as well. He wanted a bumper new contract at Palace. He's 28. We weren't prepared to give it to him. So we sold him for a really good fee. I think for me, the fact is that there was probably almost too much squad churn this summer. There was too much business that happened at the end of the window. And, we're kind of paying for that now. I actually think that we needed to do more business. We were one of a very few teams to make a kind of net profit in the Premier League this summer. Obviously, we bought in Munoz and Wharton in January, so you have to take that into account as well. But I think we actually needed to do more business. I talk about those wing-back positions. We probably needed more cover there. But yeah, it is tricky. But I do think that selling players is a really important part of kind of growing and almost like establishing yourselves in the Premier League, especially given the way financial fair play works.
How are the players who you did buy on deadline day done then? I'm trying to think who they were. Is it Lacroix, if I'm saying that right, and a couple of other defenders, I think, if I'm right? How have they done?
Yeah, so we bought in Nketiah, we bought in Lacroix. Lacroix looks like a decent player. I just think it's going to take him a little bit of time to bed into the Premier League. The Bundesliga is very different to the Premier League. We also bought in Trevor Chalobah, who wasn't fit. We saw him against Liverpool. He made his debut against them. made probably a little mistake for the goal. He lost Jota, but I actually thought on the whole he played really well. I'm actually quite excited to see what he can do for us this season. And of course, we brought in Matt Turner on loan from you guys, our backup goalkeeper. Obviously, Dean Henderson does have a bit of an injury record, but yeah, I'm really hoping we don't see too much of Matt Turner this season.
I forgot to ask about that. How did it go down when you signed Turner? Because obviously, Palace fans will have read what Forest fans said on Twitter. Did that scare you?
I wouldn't say it scared me. I think obviously we had Sam Johnson, and you can't really have two number ones. It doesn't really work. So Sam wanted to move on. Fair play to him. We got a decent fee for him. We signed him on a free transfer. Got a decent fee for him. Ultimately, Matt Turner is a backup goalkeeper. We've got a couple of very exciting young goalkeepers out on loan in the EFL, Joe Whitworth and Owen Goodman. So we don't really want to kind of block their pathway. So yeah, it's sensible to bring in a goalkeeper on loan, a backup keeper. But yeah, I must admit, I wasn't particularly impressed with what he did with you guys. So as I said, I'm hoping we don't see too much of him this season.
Well, at least Henderson's in the England squad again, and it looks like he's playing pretty well. So yeah, hopefully you're right. Hopefully you're right. Just before I ask Matt a couple of the questions, quick word for the Trent navigation. A week on Friday, so after this Palace game, or next Friday, I should say, is the Leicester game. It is happy hour at the Nav. 30% off drinks all night, chippy tea till 9 p.m. All dishes cost £8.50. You can also get barbecue and pizza from the Pizza Kitchen. So thanks as ever to the Nav for their support, and you can enjoy the build up to this game on Monday night at the Nav. So yeah, get along and show them your backing. Right. What about kind of on-field weaknesses for Palace, where Forest can hurt them? I'm trying to think of do you concede a lot from set pieces? Can we get in behind? I was going to say wing backs, but you might not play them. So is it difficult to tell if you do change formation where you might be weak in this one?
Yeah, I think if we do change formation, part of me is excited about it because if Munoz isn't fit, then I think it's the best way for us to go. Also, part of me is a little bit scared, a little bit concerned because, Glasner has had his success with the three at the back. If we go to four at the back, is that going to work? Is it going to take a bit of time to work? Because, we are getting towards a point where we don't have that much time. So, yeah, I think for me, that is a little bit of a concern. It could be a little bit clunky. Forest could maybe benefit from that. I think also this season, we've been really poor in transition. Quite a lot of the time, we've given the ball away high up the pitch, and a lot of players at the back have been out of position. And we've conceded quite a few goals on the counter attack, which, is really disappointing because they're usually quite soft goals to give away. Historically, we haven't been good from set pieces, but so far this season, that has been a little bit better. Now I've said that, inevitably we'll concede from one on Monday nights. But yeah, I must admit, I was quite pleased to see that James Ward-Prowse isn't available for this one because obviously he's an excellent set piece taker, and also he's actually got a really good record of scoring against us. So yeah, I was quite pleased to see that.
Oh, don't worry about saying that. We were terrible at set pieces last season. We keep talking about how much better we are. I know we're tempting fate every game, but touch wood, so far so good. Talking of Forest a little bit there, what have you made of them this season from afar, given the start we've had?
I think it's been really interesting. I must admit, I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Forest. I think the Premier League and English football is much better off for having teams like Forest in the top flight. I think for the first time this summer, when I look at your recruitment, actually players going in and out, I feel as though you've done some quite good business. I think there are more hits than misses. I feel as though in your first couple of years in the Premier League, you spent a lot of money and it hasn't always been spent particularly well. But I look at some of the signings this summer, and I know obviously with Elliot Anderson and Vlachodimos going to Newcastle, some of the fees were a little bit squiffy. But I think when you look at the likes of Milenkovic, even someone like Jota Silva as well, decent fee for him. James Ward-Prowse coming in on loan, I think that's an excellent bit of business. So I look at your summer and I go, do you know what? Actually, it feels as though they've kind of learnt a bit from those first couple of seasons. And also, I think given the way you started the season, I think I can see a lot more Nuno in that team, conceding far fewer goals. It feels as though for the first time since you came up, you've actually kind of got a settled kind of goalkeeper and defence in front of him, which, is really, really important because that's something that you've really struggled with in the last couple of years. I think when you look at the results, a lot of people sort of said about Forest, really good start to the season, fantastic start. I think it's been a good start. I think that victory over Liverpool is possibly doing a little bit of heavy lifting at the minute. The other win was against Southampton, wasn't it? I don't think that's going to age fantastically. I don't think they're a great team. Is it 2 points from games against Fulham, Bournemouth, and Wolves? That's not fantastic, but I think it's a good start. I think if you beat us on Monday night, it probably turns into a really good start. But yeah, it does feel as though you're definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We spent yesterday, as we record this, discussing our next 4 games are Palace at home, Leicester away, West Ham at home, and Newcastle at home. So we've got 3 out of 4 home games that will probably really decide where we're going. And Leicester away is a good fixture as well, so you would imagine. What about individuals that would worry you on the Forest team sheet if their names appear on Monday night?
Well, I mean, I'm always impressed by Murillo. I wouldn't say you're particularly worried about him because he's a centre half, but he did almost score an absolute worldie against us
Yeah.
at Selhurst Park last season. So I think he's a fantastic player. Obviously, his partnership with Milenkovic, it's early days, but that does look really promising. I'm always impressed by Morgan Gibbs-White. I know he pulled out the England squad. I know there was some talk that he might be fit for this one. As a Palace fan, I'm hoping that he's not. I think also in the wide areas, some decent pace in the Forest team. As I said, there have been times this year that we've struggled in transition, so that's something that we need to be aware of. And then obviously Chris Wood, not maybe the most sexy name in the Premier League, but a really good goal record in sort of the last year. I think when you look at someone like him, someone like Mateta, these were 2 players who have been in really good form in sort of this calendar year. And I think also when you look at someone like Chris Wood, if you said to me what's Mark Gahey's weakness, I would probably say it's physicality and sort of aerial prowess. So, again, that's another way that Forest could potentially get at Palace.
Just lastly, probably, is Hudson-Odoi versus Klein a matchup that would concern you then? I don't know if Klein's deteriorated from the really good player he was a few years ago with age. In fact, I don't know how old he is, actually, thinking about it. But is that something that would concern you if that's how it matches up in the end?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, Klein is a strange one because there's been a few times over the last couple of years where he's looked done at Premier League level. But then at the back end of last season, when Glasner came in, he kind of filled the right centre half role in the back 3, and he was absolutely outstanding. So it's tricky. He's been a fantastic player for us over the years. I think, what is he now? Probably 32, 33. Yes, I think in a foot race with Hudson-Odoi, that would concern me. But it's up to us to make sure that he's not left isolated in 1v1. So I'm sure that would be something that they are aware of. Obviously, I'm hoping that Daniel Munoz will be fit. I'm not convinced that he will be, but he's got bundles of energy. He's so important for us, especially going forwards on that right hand side. So yeah, not having him would be a massive blow. Yeah, hopefully Klein can do a job, but he will need a little bit of help.
I think he was older than that. He's one of those players that's, especially as a non-Palace fan, it feels like he's been around for forever. Like when he was signing for Liverpool under like Hodgson, I think it was, and all that stuff. So yeah, is Joel Ward still at Palace as well? He's been another one who feels like he's been around for 30 years. Was he gone?
Yeah, so Joel Ward is still at Palace. I mean, he signed for us the year we got promoted in 2012-13. So he's a proper stalwart. He hasn't really featured much this season. It's kind of, he's kind of being phased out, I think. We will see him at some point this season. Sorry, postman's at the door. We will see him at some point this season, but yeah, hopefully not too much.
Good. Interesting stuff. Good stuff. Right. If you have enjoyed that, do us a favor and hit like on the video. You can subscribe, become a channel member, keep those good reviews on iTunes and Spotify. 5-star reviews, very much welcome. So thank you very much for that. Matt, thank you very much. Where can people find a bit more of your podcast if they want to hear some reaction from the Palace point of view on the other side of this game?
Yeah, so myself and my cousin Ben, we make up the Team Called Palace podcast. We're on Spotify and iTunes. So yeah, if you want kind of weekly Palace chat, that's the place to go to.
Excellent. Thanks very much to everyone who's listened. We'll be back next post-match show. Actually, I would think it will be straight after the game on Monday night, and then on Tuesday we'll take full stock with former Reds defender Kelvin Wilson, and then a couple of the podcast regulars. So in the meantime, have a good weekend, and if we don't see you on Monday, we shall see you soon.